Today's episode is sponsored by our friends over at Chef IQ. I have been a very pessimistic, sort of stern critic of Omega's MoonSwatch collection release strategy, and I'll get into why in just a minute, but I'd like to pay them a compliment. And it's that these new MoonSwatches are actually quite lovely. These new MoonSwatches embody everything that I think a MoonSwatch should. Not to say that a MoonSwatch should even exist. It's kind of sacrilege entirely, but I like them. But these ones are great. This three-piece collection from Omega, released 2 years after the originals, I think has finally restored a little bit of dignity to the collection. So today we'll be talking about the MoonSwatch history just a little bit. I won't bore you all with it ad nauseum, but some people that are watching maybe could learn a little bit about some of that history and how interesting it was. And then we'll talk about why I like these watches, particularly in comparison to, I think, the dark days of the Omega MoonSwatch, which have run on for the last, year plus of just miserable releases. The MoonSwatch itself, what is it? Why is it interesting? How did it even happen, right? The entire idea, the entire notion is kind of wild. I'm not going to say it's unprecedented in luxury spaces, but it's verging on it, right? A collaboration between brands is commonplace, relatively speaking, but collaboration between brands on such polar ends of the price spectrum is not, particularly when the collaboration leans more on the side of the affordable brand. Having a Swatchy Omega Moonwatch would have actually been more logical, right? It actually would have been, it would have made more sense because it would have been able to retain the Omega price point, $8,000-ish, and not compromise, the perceived value of that very iconic design, right? The MoonWatch design. That would have been something that was more predictable. Still maybe, still maybe surprising, but more predictable. This, what they did instead, right, taking the Omega design and offering it at $320 to the entire Swatch community was bizarre. And I do think within the realms of unprecedented, certainly unusual. When these watches were released, they set the world ablaze. There were these incredible lines. Someone was even stabbed in New York, which doesn't say all that much. The sales were remarkable. Right, we're talking about over 1 million units worldwide. And at $320, we're talking about $320 million. And they said it was over 1 million. So this very well could have been a $400 million top line revenue opportunity without factoring in the, kind of trickle down effects. Well, how many more swatches were sold because of the Omega MoonSwatch release? Because if the MoonSwatch sold 1 million, 1.1, 1.2 million units, how did the other models do? And that's just in the Swatch category, right? Just walking into the Swatch store, understanding the customer journey. You walk in, you buy a MoonSwatch, maybe you buy your daughter a watch, your son a watch, or your niece or your wife, and you kind of make it a family affair. I can't even imagine what this did to the Swatch bottom line as a company. But of course, Swatch is not just a company that produces watches. It's also the name of the conglomerate, the parent company, the Swatch Group, who also owns Omega. Well, what did it do for Omega? When this collaboration was announced, I know absolutely a lot of the Omega folks were very pissed off because apparently they had no say in the matter, right? Daddy, functionally, right, the conglomerate owner, pulled rank and said, this is what we're doing, and you don't like it. I don't particularly care. I'm the only billionaire here, so I don't particularly care what you think about, whether or not I'm compromising the value of the MoonWatch. It's mine. It's not yours. You think it's yours, and I allow you to pretend like it's yours, but it's really just mine, right? That you're playing around with and making an income off of. Kind of crazy way to pull rank. Okay, they did it, and apparently it led to a remarkable rise in sales for the MoonWatch as well. So if we're talking about top line revenue on the MoonSwatches alone at somewhere around $400 million. And by the way, those margins had to be pretty sweet. So the difference between top line and net probably wasn't very much. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, probably over $300 million in profit, basically, on the MoonSwatch. Then factoring in all of the other additional sales that came in the Swatch store, then factoring in the Omega rise in popularity, right? The MoonWatch rise, wild success. So brilliant. Maybe one of the smartest moves in the watch, industry, one of the most profitable moves in the watch industry in a long, long time, right? Omega arguably cashed in as a brand, cashed in on the watch craze of the COVID era. But with this move, the largest benefactor by far was the brand itself. So you got to give them that credit, that crown. Moving on, I think they continued to dilute the entire release. I think that they saw the money and they were blinded by it, and they allowed the money to guide their decision making, which Makes sense. I know the money should be the North Star. Of course, we are in business after all. But it shouldn't blind you from creative decision-making. It shouldn't blind you from the reality that certain designs or certain things are just lazy and bad, right? Everyone's been there. Everyone's, released something or put their name on a piece of work that was subpar. That happens. That is human. But at a multi-billion-dollar corporation, the redundancy is supposed to prevent that. The redundancy, all of these salaries are supposed to, do a bunch of things. But certainly one of them is call out BS when they see it. Hey guys, it seems as if we could put a little bit more work into this and it's not going to cost us any more money and it's going to be better and it's just going to, make the product more representative of, our brand and it's going to make us, look more intelligent and like we care more. Instead, they just released a bunch of different, what is essentially, I think, sort of boring MoonSwatches, which is the opposite of the point. The MoonSwatch was cool because it was all these crazy colors and it was playful and very swatchy. And I know that many of you guys have the blacks and the grays and whatever MoonSwatches, and they're cool. I don't blame you for having them. They're neat watches. I would wear one. It's not a question. But the brand itself, Omega, certainly lost, in my view, sight of the fact that what made the MoonSwatches so neat and so fun and so cool and so separate from the MoonWatch were the colors and the playfulness, the whimsical nature of the approach. They screwed it up and they released edition after edition after edition after edition after edition after edition of mediocre watches. Silly. I do understand why they did it, but it was silly and I think it was disappointing. Today's episode is sponsored by Chef IQ. I can't tell you how many of you guys out there have ordered from Chef IQ and been sending me photos of your perfect meat. That was funny. Chef IQ is the world's smartest and thinnest wireless meat thermometer with unlimited range and Wi-Fi connectivity that allows you to monitor your food from anywhere. And their app features real-time cooking alerts, timers, and a live cooking graph, as well as hundreds of recipes with guided cooking step-by-step videos. The point here, ladies and gentlemen, watch geeks, friends, family, is celebration, spending time well. We like to eat. I love to eat. I love to drink great wine. I love to eat great meat. It's who I am. And I hate the idea, even the notion of overcooking or undercooking a piece of beautiful meat. Not only does it do an injustice to the meat itself, but it ruins the night, right? And it makes the chef or the cook, who is really trying very hard to entertain, not only anxious that he might overcook this meat, but it's the worst feeling when you botch a piece of meat when you've got guests, expecting a nice roast or whatever it may be. I hate it. And too much of it is a guessing game. And I just don't like leaving important things up to chance. And for me, right, that piece of meat, that beautiful, bistecca fiorentina or lamb roast it's a very special moment, right, to be shared with family and friends. And the idea of any opportunities going to waste or any, meat squandered is a shame, right? So this is one of the best things you could buy for yourself, one of the best gifts you can get somebody. I'm so glad when I see so many of you sending me photos of your beautiful roasted chicken or your roast or your piece of salmon or whatever it may be. Chef IQ just doesn't leave it up to chance. Chef IQ is the genius behind better entertaining. I couldn't possibly recommend the product more. It works in the grill, in the air fryer, deep fryer, smoker, stove, oven, or even sous vide, and it's available in a 1, 2, or 3-prong configuration. Again, head on over to Chef IQ. I couldn't possibly recommend them enough. Fast forward. They have finally released a new MoonSwatch, a new collection of 3 Mission to Earth watches that are awesome. They're inspired by the lava, the polar lights, and the desert regions that can be seen from outer space. One better than the other. I love them. I love all 3 of them. I can't wait to see these, in the metal, but really it's in the bioceramic. The price point is $270, which is actually below where they were originally released. I have no idea what the thought process was behind a price reduction. I don't think it needed to happen. I mean, that's a $50 per unit price reduction, and they're going to sell a ton. I don't understand why they would do that, but I trust that they know better than me. I trust that their market research and their PR teams are very well informed. So there must be a reason, there. But the point of this video is to rehash the conversation and give credit where it's due. And I think the largest compliment I can pay the MoonSwatch is that what I said before, it maybe was the greatest release of the COVID era. It probably was the greatest release, maybe even in a longer period of time. I think they're great watches. I don't own one. I actually bought a Tag Kith, which is a, much sillier, much more expensive, like MoonSwatch. I would say derivative, but the Tag Heuer Formula Ones actually predate the MoonSwatch concept by a long, long time. So I did buy in on the craze to a degree, but this was new. Of course, related to something that had happened in the 80s, sure, but I still think original in many ways. From a strictly balance sheet point of view, it was brilliant and it made a fortune, and it didn't hurt the Omega brand, which was the fear of the Omega executives when this was released originally. Instead, it maybe even, expanded the Omega Moonwatch base, maybe the Omega base entirely. Omega's done a very good job, and this wasn't their own doing, right? Omega as a brand was just a benefactor of a decision that was made up on high by the executives, by the Swatch Group executives. So I won't give Omega as a brand the credit for this, this cunning navigation of the watch waters, but huge opportunity. These are great watches. I'm glad to see that they've, I think, gone back to understanding and releasing MoonSwatches that embody what made it cool to begin with. And the fact they released it at a discounted price, all the more, right? Why not? It's $50 in your pocket, right? That's a lunch and, some ice cream or whatever the heck, right? You're going to go and buy now. That's how I always look at watches and discounts. It's like, when you get a discount or whatever, it's like, oh, great, I can go celebrate now, right? Not that you couldn't before, but now it's like free. Now the watch and the celebration came free, right? I've done that on watches so many times, and people are like, can you do any better on this watch? I'm like, not really. I mean, I can knock off $150 and you can, $200 and you can go have dinner. How about that? I can't make a meaningful discount, but dinner's fun, But anyway, cool watches. Great job, Omega. Period end. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel if you'd like more insights into the watch industry. If you want really behind the ropes conversations, go over to the Zero. Link is down below. It's our private podcast community where every week we release conversations, not just of my thoughts on the industry, but with guests as well. And we have these really interesting roundtables and discussions with people from, complementary worlds, right? Clothing and entrepreneurship and independent collecting and all that sort of thing. So if you do go sign up, shoot me a message. I'd love to chat. And you also get a free credit. If you are a Zero and you haven't used your credit yet, shoot me a DM and I'll send you your access code to your watch strap credit. And that's it. So good on Omega. Bully.